The hardest part was the identity crisis that I had. The thing that relieved my stress was also the thing that was causing more stress.
He's a best-selling author and just all-around great dude that is helping countless people, millions of people over the last decade.
In 2009, I became certified as a personal trainer. I had a client of mine. I used to get so frustrated with him. He would be like chowing down on all the pizza and the brownies and the cake. Like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for people like me, because for you, it's always been easy. This idea just kind of popped in my head. Like, what if you got fat on purpose? Before you know it, dude, I started a website, started a YouTube channel. I was very humbled. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it changed my perspective on so many things. We create an identity around our bodies and what they look like for most of our life. You want to be healthy, like you have to work harder for it. We kind of have it backwards in our society, but food addiction is kind of swept under the rug. It's just discipline yourself and willpower through it, you'll be fine. But you wouldn't tell a drug addict, like, just willpower your way out of it, dude. It's not that hard. You just do it, right? We know that there's a chemical dependency, and the problem with the food in our society is I think it creates a chemical dependency as well.
I wonder if in a lot of these foods, if there's purposeful addictive chemicals on top of sugar that they're putting in there, because you see all these chemical names on the back of a box of cereal. What is all that?
This isn't made up. This is legit stuff that really exists. This is kind of what we're up against, like being able to hack the human brain for addiction with food.
We got Drew Manning in the house today for our Man on a Mission audience looking in. This is going to be a fun conversation. I love Drew. I've been a big fan of Drew Manning for a long time now. And if you don't know Drew Manning, you should go look him up. Go follow him right now. Drew Manning is an incredibly inspiring human. And if many people know Drew from Fit to Fat to Fit, it was really the brand that went global, that blew up, that put him all over the map. But, you know, I'll let him kind of tell the story of it. But it was something that really went viral, and it became something that I don't think had ever been done before. A really unique concept that connected Drew on an emotional level to something that many people in the fitness space that have been healthy their whole life have really been challenged to sort of connect to, the way Drew can explain the process he went through. Drew's a best-selling author and just all-around great dude that is helping countless people, millions of people over the last decade. Maybe even longer than that, Drew. I'm not sure. You coach me on that, but this is just the Drew that I know, right? Just out there in the world being amazing. Drew, thanks for doing the Man on a Mission podcast, brother.
Yeah, Eric Rock, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on. Excited to do this with you, man.
Yeah, no, me too. I've been wanting to do this for a while. So Drew's in Hawaii right now. I would love to have Drew in the studio because he's just such a presence, but I'm grateful that he jumped on with us all the way from the Big Island.
Yep. Love it out here, man.
All right, Drew, so let's talk about it. Fit to Fat to Fit. Why don't we just get into it real quick? For our audience that doesn't know, or the audience that's curious about the backstory, where did the idea come from, and then what is it?
Yeah, it is. So this idea, I did it back in 2011, so over a decade ago, man. I've been in this game doing this thing. So I had this crazy idea because I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and I was number 7 out of 11. And we all grew up playing sports. So I was very fit, very active from a very young age. I played American football and wrestling. And as a byproduct of that, obviously, I was in shape pretty much the majority of my life as a kid growing up, but I never knew any different. And then in 2009, became certified as a personal trainer. You know, health and fitness was always a passion of mine. So I was like, all right, like, what's my passion? Health and fitness. Let me help people. And so here I was, someone who had never been overweight a day in my life, trying to help people who were overweight, you know, pretty much the majority of their life. And I had a client of mine, he was my brother-in-law at the time, overweight, and I was training him. And I used to get so frustrated with him because we would go to these family functions and he would be like chowing down on all the pizza and the brownies and the cake. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we're working out together. Like, you're paying me to train you. And here you are just like self-sabotaging, eating all the food. And he's like, Drew, you don't understand how hard it is for people like me, because for you, it's always been easy. And I was very judgmental back then. I'll be totally honest with you. I couldn't understand why it was so hard for him or people like him just to put down the junk food, go to the gym, have some willpower, have some discipline, and just do it. Right. And when he told me that, he's like, Drew, you don't understand. I was like, you're right. I don't understand. And so my brain started thinking of ideas like, how can I gain a better understanding? Maybe there's something I'm missing as a trainer. And this idea just kind of popped in my head. Like, what if you got fat on purpose and you documented the whole thing? And maybe that would teach you some lessons. And so this is like early 2011. And I had this idea, and this light bulb kind of went off like, and it kind of felt like a calling. Like I felt like I was being called to do this crazy experiment. So I called my wife at the time. I was like, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?" She was pregnant, by the way. And she was like, "So you're telling me we're gonna have junk food in the house?" While she was pregnant, of course, which causes you to have a lot of cravings. And so she was supportive of it. I called like friends and family to see what they thought about the idea. And before you know it, dude, I started a website, started a YouTube channel, and my wife would document me on this journey. So the idea was 6 months, no exercise, unrestricted diet, eat whatever I want to for 6 months, put on X amount of pounds, however many pounds I gain in 6 months. And then the idea was to lose it again and hopefully gain a better understanding. And that was
Hmm.
the idea in a nutshell. That's how it got started. And like you said, the story blew up. I blew up literally. And it was a crazy ride, man. It was a crazy experiment. But looking back on it now, no regrets. I was very humbled. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it changed my perspective on so many things.
Yeah, this is incredible. I've always wanted to have this like deeper conversation about with you, the
Yeah.
connection and the process you went through. This is for people that don't know, I think this is an intriguing story to hear. So gaining the weight, once you kind of sort of set in the idea and you started really going all in on it, building the website, doing things that you can't come back from, and then you start documenting it. Once you put it out there, you got to perform. So it kind of probably encourages that all in, because I can imagine how many people would have, especially fitness minded people, like you get, you know what, never mind, I quit. I'm not doing this shit. And so big question comes to my mind is, I put myself in your shoes, is what was the hardest struggle about it? I'm assuming that the eating the bad food for a guy that has, always been healthy wasn't the easiest, but for me, I can't imagine forcing myself to not go to the gym every day. That would be like torture for a person like me, because that is where I come alive. That's where my soul, like, I am addicted to the process. I love it. What was the hardest part for you?
That's a good question, man. It was twofold. I'll be honest with you. The food was kind of fun, especially at first.
Right. Sure.
You're like this kid in a candy store going to the grocery store and just chowing down all the sugary cereals and all the sodas and stuff. Dude, there was an aspect of fun for the first, I would say, 2 to 4 weeks. The hardest part, to be
Hmm.
honest with you, was the identity crisis that I had, because people like you and me who have like worked so hard for a body, we create a self image around our body image. And I definitely did that. And people who are overweight do this as well, where we create an identity around our bodies and what they look like for most of our life. And so when I even gained the first 20 pounds, bro, I was so uncomfortable, so insecure about my body. I wanted to go up to strangers and explain to them, like, hey, I'm not really overweight. This is just an experiment. Like, I normally look like this. I would like wanted to show them my before picture, because I freaked out. Like, to be totally honest with you, my identity was wrapped up in my body for so long. And I didn't realize that until I put on the first, 15, 20, 25 pounds. And I ended up gaining 76 pounds of pure fat in 6 months. And that was a trip, man. That was very humbling. So the mental and emotional side of this is what opened up my eyes to how much of transformation is mental and emotional, that I had no idea. I just thought about it from a physical perspective, like eat less and work out, and then boom, you'll get the results. But it opened up my eyes to how much of transformation is mental and emotional, how much of us create these identities around our body images as our self images. And that really helped me, along the road later on in life, with detaching from my body image as my self image. But there's a component to it, like that you mentioned, where, people like you and me, working out is our therapy.
Mm.
That's our stress reliever. That's our outlet on life, because otherwise we'll go crazy. What's interesting is food became my stress reliever, and it creates this vicious cycle, because the thing that relieved my stress was also the thing that was causing more stress. And so I understand and have more empathy now for people that get stuck in that vicious cycle of food being this outlet for them, but the food is what's causing the sickness and the disease and the unhealthiness that people experience. And a lot of people get stuck there year after year, decade after decade. So it was very eye opening for me.
Wow. I'm trying to imagine, I love trying to put myself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Walk me through your average day when you were, when you were on this idea.
Oh, dude. Okay, let's do it. So, do you remember like in the 80s, there was commercials for like a complete American breakfast? It was like a bowl of cereal, piece of toast, and orange juice,
Oh
right?
my God,
That
dream
was me, but
breakfast.
supersize it. So, like a huge bowl of cinnamon toast crunch with like a
Oh,
huge tall glass of orange juice, bagel with cream cheese. And then, in between breakfast and lunch, I would have a snack and I would, probably have like three or four granola bars covered in chocolate with like a couple Mountain Dews. For lunch, I would have like three or four peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with some Doritos or Pringles. And then in between lunch and dinner was another snack, right? This is how a lot of Americans eat, by the way. I know
sure.
to you and me it sounds crazy, but
I'm like
in
salivating.
between in between lunch and dinner was like, the same kind of thing, chips and like granola bars. And then dinner was like white pasta, marinara sauce, garlic bread. And then before you go to bed, you got to have a snack like while you're watching TV or something. And that was either another bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which for some reason at nighttime it tasted way better,
Hmm.
or just like a bunch of like cookies and ice cream. And that was like a typical day. So you're looking at 5,000 plus calories of highly processed junk food.
Yeah,
But these are the types of foods, like I said, 80% of Americans gravitate towards this food because these foods are what's subsidized by the government, and they tend to be cheaper, more convenient, right? Just like putting a Pop Tart in a toaster, or just being able to like chow down on like food that's just so palatable. It's hyper palatable to where our dopamine levels are just like,
sure.
salivating at eating this food because they're so tasty and they're freaking, super convenient. Like these are the types of foods that a lot of Americans gravitate towards because this is what's pushed on us. And
Sure.
we've been taught like, it's low fat, or it's all natural, or it's fortified with vitamin A or vitamin D, or whatever the marketing is to get us to buy these foods. And it's freaking addictive. It's really addictive. And I ate that way for 6 months straight. And yes, the food tasted good. It made me feel like crap later on, but it definitely created this vicious cycle of dependency.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that
Yeah.
made me salivate because that's like my dream like setup. If I could
Yeah, of
choose and be
course.
healthy, but I got to think about. I got to be honest. Like my connection to with that was cinnamon toast crunch when I was a kid was my favorite cereal, and I was
I
blessed
don't
as an
blame you.
athlete. I was always an athlete. I kind of eat anything as a kid, and I was still had a six pack.
Yeah.
Not everyone get away with
Yeah.
that. It's only when I started learning about nutrition as I got more to high school and into college. Once you start taking life more seriously, but I didn't get trapped in it. But I still have the psychological connection to the taste of that food. And you're right, it's all chemicals. But so if I eat it now, say I do eat it now, I would feel like
Yeah.
shit immediately, and it just doesn't last long. Like that,
Yeah.
you get really sick. But you're right. So many families that mean well feed their kids everything that's in the middle of the grocery store.
Yeah.
And
It's true,
man,
man. And this is why I have so much empathy for people that struggle, because we like to think, oh, just buy grass fed, just buy organic, like wild caught, free range, like all these things. But you have to pay a premium. It's like our society makes it harder for people. It's not impossible. It's just, hey, you want to be healthy? You're gonna have to pay more. You have to get a gym membership. You're gonna have to like research what supplements to take and how to exercise. And like it's almost like we make it an uphill battle for people to like, oh, you want to be healthy? Like you have to like work harder for it. And so we kind of have it backwards in our society, but it was very eye opening because when I ate this way for 6 months and then transitioned to eating healthy again, that's where my eyes were opened. Where
mm,
for the first 2 weeks of eating healthy food, so here I was eating like 5,000 calories of cinnamon toast crunch and junk food, and then all of a sudden 2,000 calories of real whole food. You would think, oh yeah, you're going to feel great, you're drinking green smoothies and eating chicken and broccoli and spinach, and you're going to feel great right away. Dude, I felt like crap for the first 2 weeks. It was like my body was fighting back against me, like going through these withdrawal symptoms,
right.
like basically saying like, where's the high that we've had for 6 months? And I felt miserable for the first 2 weeks. I had headaches, I was grumpy, I was moody, I was hungry, the food didn't taste nearly as good as I remember it tasting. And I was like, here I am, a personal trainer, proponent of health, but then I was struggling with the cravings. The mental connection to the food was a lot more powerful than I ever imagined it would be. It eventually, your body adjusts. after a few weeks, your taste buds adjust, and I feel like your body adapts to the foods. But those first 2 weeks, that was a struggle for me, and it helped me understand my clients a little bit more. Where I would give them a meal plan, and then they would struggle to follow that meal plan, and I couldn't understand why it was so hard for them just to be consistent. I'm like, you just do it, right? And this
Hmm.
experience opened up my eyes to, okay, maybe it's not as easy as I thought it was. And maybe I understand the emotional connection to food so much deeper now that I've experienced it. And that's what Fit to Fat to Fit is all about, man. There's a good quote that I love by Teddy Roosevelt. And he says, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
And that for me really
So good.
was profound because you could have all the knowledge in the world. Like you and I could teach people how to eat healthy, how to get in your macros and get in the right amount of micronutrients and this and that. But that doesn't matter unless that person knows that you care about them first and foremost. So that quote really resonates with me. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's kind of what Fit to Fat to Fit is all about. I'm trying to bring more empathy to the fitness industry instead of us judging people and shaming people for maybe struggling with
Hmm.
food addiction.
Yeah, that whole journey. I'm trying to imagine what might have been the hardest part for you, and I don't know if I would have considered the transformation back to health being something so hard. So
Yeah,
you're saying in those 2 weeks, every day was like having drug withdrawals.
that's what
Wow.
I would say. And
Yeah.
I don't want to compare food addiction to drug addiction.
Okay.
Obviously, those are two separate things, but it's very similar in the way your body, the biology of it, and how
Sure.
it works. Of the high that you get from certain foods is similar to the high that you would get with certain drugs. And there's so many people because that are stuck in that vicious cycle. But food addiction is kind of swept under the rug. It's like, oh
Sure.
yeah, just discipline yourself and willpower through it, you'll be fine. But you wouldn't tell a drug addict, like, just willpower your way out of it, dude. It's not that hard. You just do it, right? We know that there's a chemical dependency. And the problem with the food in our society is I think it creates a chemical dependency as well,
Right.
especially if it is cheaper and more convenient. And those are the foods that are subsidized by the government.
Yeah.
Like we're creating this sick society because of that.
Yeah. Well, they say that sugar is a greater addiction or equal to cocaine. I've heard that before. As far as like the brain chemistry of getting on something that you're doing all the time and that same effort to get off of it, there's a powerful
Yeah.
connection. I've heard that many times. I wonder if in a lot of these foods, if there's purposeful addictive chemicals on top of sugar, or that they're putting in there, because you see all these chemical names on the back of a box of cereal. What is all that?
Yeah.
But then why do we crave it so bad? Is it? I mean, it almost is like it might be done on purpose by an industry that is profit driven. Let's be honest.
Yeah, man. And these companies, let's talk about it. Like they spend millions of dollars on food scientists to come up with the most addictive combinations of colors and textures and crunch levels of everything to the marketing and the
Right.
colors on the box. They do, these test studies on people of what would be the most, like, even to the point of how many bites do you need to feel the crunch of a Doritos chip before it's too soggy, right? Like those are the kinds of metrics that we're up against, where you have
Bizarre.
these food scientists, going rounds and rounds of like getting it just right so that they can get it as addictive as possible. And this isn't like some conspiracy theory. This isn't made up. This is legit stuff that really exists that people, maybe don't know about, but
Hmm.
this is kind of what we're up against, like being able to hack the human brain for
Yeah.
addiction with food. And I think we live in that world right now.
I was with Jessie Lee, a dear friend who passed away last year, but I remember being with her one time, and we were looking at a bag of candy from Germany, and that
Yeah.
same brand, same manufacturer, same brand in America, it literally had a whole series of different chemicals in the American brand, and everything in the brand from Germany, I actually could identify everything that was in them. But the American brand had all these chemicals that couldn't even pronounce the name of. Why in America is there so many chemicals in food that are not in chemicals in the same brand, same manufacturer, same everything in other countries?
Yeah. Well, this is what the fight is right now with RFK Jr. coming on board, where that's kind of his mission is to kind of combat this of going after these food companies and getting rid of some of these toxic chemicals that we know exist in our food here in the U.S., but in other countries they're banned.
Yeah.
That's a good question, and I think having the right people on for that discussion, that would be a really, really good discussion of
It
like
would
why
be.
are these foods legal here and why are they illegal overseas in
Sure.
other countries? And who knows, maybe this will like prompt some change where with RFK Jr. kind of tackling this head on and seeing if someone like him can make a difference. I'm hopeful. I don't know what will happen in the end, and it's a tough situation because I have kids, I have teenagers, and I don't want to turn it into a religion for them. This is kind of a deep topic, like that. Hopefully you don't mind me talking about. It's
No.
a tough line to draw because yes, I do believe a lot of these foods are bad for us, but at the same time, my kids want like they're normal teenage kids and they have Doritos and they have Takis. And if I try and control everything they eat and talk to them about how poisonous this stuff is, it kind of creates this dogmatic approach to food. And that's the other downside to this. It comes at a cost of like, I would love it if all we had access to was grass-fed, organic, free-range, wild-caught food that exists. And my daughters only ate that food, but we live in a world where you're competing, like trying to get them to eat broccoli versus, you know, all the sugary cereals that exist. Like you're gonna lose. Like you just are. Like kids are. The human brain is wired for that dopamine hit, right?
Yeah.
And it's a tough battle
Yeah.
for all the parents out there. So I can empathize with all the parents struggling, trying to
Yeah.
do their best, but we can only do so much. You got to leave your kids some agency to choose for themselves.
That's a good point. And if you think of the way the American society was built, especially where it's landed, the reality is this: every American holiday, which breaks up regularly different parts of the year, every single, even your birthday, every event is built around marketing material that sort of has cupcakes with Fourth of July banners on them, birthday cake, Valentine's Day candy. I mean, just it's built around food. I mean, so you realize if you really think deeply about it, the American culture is built around sort of food, but not from our sort of ancestors' perspective, sort of a modern day approach to how we celebrate things. And yeah, if you're going to starve your kid of a birthday that they see every other little kid getting because you're a Nazi about what goes in their mouth, that may not be a winning battle. They're going to, it might be like torturing a child, but I get it, man. It's just a part of the experience of being a parent that we have to all acknowledge. But this is at least something that's worth talking about at the end of the day. Because how many people do you think are blindly eating, not knowing what they're putting in their food? I remember when, even in my own family, my mom would say like, "Oh, it's healthy. It's a salad." And you'd see like the packaged ranch dressing, you know what I mean? Like just so many, even little things like that. Or even, I remember hearing that like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which, oh my God, I love PB&Js. Back in the day, I slammed so many of those, but hearing that, oh, that's healthy. It's a sandwich or a Subway sandwich. Oh, that's healthy. People don't really know what healthy is on average, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I think we're the first generation that has access to knowledge of the
Right.
foods that are super healthy for us. I think our parents had to go out of their way to understand nutrition, macros, and how like they didn't
Yes.
know any of that. They're just like, oh, well, I've heard this is low fat, and there's the food pyramid. And so,
Sure.
everyone's a product of their environment. And I think we're the first generation to kind of have access to all the information that exists out there, and we're starting to learn. So hopefully with that access to knowledge, we can start to say, hey, enough is enough. We don't want this in our food anymore. Let's make some changes as a society. So I'm hopeful for the future because I see where my daughter, especially my 15-year-old, where she is and her knowledge of nutrition. When I was 15, like I was a dumb rock
Sure.
as a 15-year-old kid. Like I didn't know what I was eating. I wish I had the knowledge that I have now, and seeing her like understand protein and carbs and fats and why all that's super important. It leaves me hopeful for like the next generation that they'll
Absolutely.
better understand. But yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck in what I would call survival mode, where whether you're a single parent or married, like you're struggling with finances, you're struggling with the economy, you're struggling with all kinds of things. The last thing that you sometimes have to like think about is health and nutrition and meal prepping when you're just barely getting by. It's so much easier just not to think about it because you go to work or you work two jobs, you come home, you're exhausted. you're overwhelmed. And when you're triggered and overwhelmed, you're just looking for like a quick, easy way out. This is why so many people get addicted to food, drugs, alcohol, social media, TV shows, things like that are just a quick, easy dopamine hit to escape like the stresses of life and the overwhelm of it all. It's so much easier to do that than it is to go to the gym, work out, meal prep, like put effort into it because they're putting effort in other places. A lot of people just want to escape. And this is why I love Dr. Gabor Mate's work about addiction. He says behind every addiction is pain.
Hmm.
And people want to escape the pain of life. And it's so much easier to escape through these type of substances, which make us feel good. They taste good, and they kind of temporarily take away the emotional pains of life. And because of this modern, fast-paced society we live in, like I said, it's easier to escape our uncomfortable emotions than it is to do the work, like
Yeah,
show up, exercise, go to therapy, journal, meditate. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
So there needs to be some, uh, like I think people having access to more tools and different modalities that can help them, like other coping mechanisms other than food, drugs, and alcohol.
Right. Well, the one thing I think we can inspire in our audience, especially for people that have kids, is that you better
Yeah.
be at the very least you could be the example. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
do the best you can, but you better be what you at least sort of like want your kids to be. At least be the hero that you hope that they'll one day be.
Amen.
That may be the best answer that you can put into your own life, but you really need to first break out of some bad habits, be aware of what you have going on, then make a game plan. But I want to ask you some advice since you've been through the process. It's cool that
Yeah.
you've been through the process on both sides. You gained it, you lost it. It's so unique. You gained fame over it. As far as the person then that's now looking and say, all right, I need to make some changes. The problem probably lies the thing you had to battle with. You come to a stressful day at work and you say, F it. You may have been strong for one day, eating healthy foods that are clean and organic, whatever. And then all of a sudden you go off the deep end and that's when you just go binge. And all that work that day, psychologically, you just failed yourself. That's an emotional roller coaster I see a lot of people go through that try to get healthy. I've seen it myself where they go for a couple of days and then they're off the wagon and they don't get back on. They're off for a long time. Can you describe or give some advice to a person? Say it's a sugar. Let's just use the sugar addiction that may be pulling someone back in after like a stressful day or emotional response, or just the addiction itself. Is there some tricks or hacks to fight through that people can start putting some focus on that could maybe wear off the intensity of the addictive moment when you're about to just see red and say, I'm going to go get that pizza or whatever the thing is that you're craving?
Yeah, yeah. And I'll start with a quote that I love, and it's by Anthony DeMello. He wrote a book called Awareness, and he says, what you're aware of, you're in control of, and what you're not aware of is in control of you. I think a lot of people are unaware of why they are the way they are and why they respond the way they respond. So we're just kind of like going around like that movie with Adam Sandler called Click, where he's just on autopilot. We're just kind of coasting through the day. We're not truly present. We're just kind of reacting to everything that's in front of us. And I think a lot of people are unaware of why they even do what they do. And then they beat themselves up. Like, why can't I just be disciplined? Why can't I stay consistent? So the first step is to build self-awareness, become aware of what you're doing in the moment. And to build that self-awareness, you got to learn how to be present. So another book that I recommend to people is A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
So good.
And in that book, he talks about the space that we can create between stimulus and response. And the more space we can create between the stimulus, right? Like you're triggered, someone triggered you, you're gotten into a fight with your spouse or your kids or your boss or whatever. Between that trigger, that stimulus, there's a reaction that's already built in, right? When you're on autopilot, you have these reactions built in because you've been, a product of your environment for years and decades now. And what you can do is to create space between stimulus and response. And in order to do that, you have to come back to the present moment. And this is why I'm such a big proponent of breath work, teaching people how to use breath work in these moments where they want to react. Sometimes you want to punch someone in the face. Sometimes you want to eat your emotions. Sometimes you want to take a drink and drink away your emotions. And being able to push pause and create space between stimulus and response, that gives you now the power to choose how you want to respond.
Such a
And
good
this is
answer.
something that I teach people now through a method that I call conscious fitness. And it tackles these types of challenges for people instead of just like, hey, here's your meal plan, here's your workout, just
Right.
do it.
No, I
Giving
agree.
them hacks, like you said, or techniques that can help them take some space between being triggered and reacting a certain way to then just being able to regulate your nervous system, calm down, take a few deep breaths, and then respond how you want to respond. And so the first step is self-awareness. The next step is developing self-respect. And when you have self-respect, I think that can lead to self-love. And when you start to develop self-love, then you start to see these things instead of as punishments as or chore, like, oh, I have to eat healthy, or oh, I have to go to the gym. Now these things become little acts of self-love. Like, I deserve to have good physical health. I deserve to have good mental health, because if I have good physical health and good mental health, I'm a better mom, I'm a better dad, I'm a better employee, I'm a better business owner, I'm a better version of myself. And so these things that are might be uncomfortable, to eat the chicken and broccoli and meal prep that instead of order the pizza or the ice cream or whatever it is, now you're looking at these things that, might be uncomfortable in the moment as acts of self-love instead of a form of punishment. Same thing with exercise, same thing with breath work or therapy or
Yes.
meditating or journaling. Being able to shift your perception from, these things suck, I got to do this, to I love myself enough to do these things because they're little acts of kindness. Then you start to show up for yourself differently. You start to show up for your kids differently. And there's one last quote that I'll say, and then I'll turn it back over to you. And I don't know who the author of this quote is, but it says, if you don't heal what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those who didn't cut you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And so what that means to me is, if you don't heal, the patterns and behaviors that cause you a lot of pain and hurt, you're going to pass that on to your kids, to your spouse, to the ones that didn't even cause the pain in the first place. You're going to unconsciously pass it on to them unless you become aware of why you do what you do and why you react the way you react. And this is kind of what conscious fitness is all about. It's a different approach to helping people through their health and fitness journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love that you've really transitioned the brand from Fit to Fat to Fit, which was a great, you killed it with that brand and everything you've accomplished there. But, I want to really highlight what you said here, moving into conscious fitness. And I want to challenge our audience that if they struggle with any of this stuff, Drew is a perfect place to go, like, put some energy into it. I know he's got all kinds of retreats that we'll highlight all the things here, but that he's doing. But
Sure.
There's a lot of resources now that if you do struggle with something we tapped into, that's not just a meal plan, there's resources
Yeah.
that will change your life. It kind of reminds me of, rewiring your brain. I just did a whole podcast with Dr. T. I know you're friends with him.
Yep.
He had his own approach to this. And I think universally, this is such a sound system that maybe people have different words, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I even have my own little system when I can feel sort of my emotions getting out of control, where I can pause where their fear
Yep.
sets in, or where there's some sort of a feeling that I don't like. Being able to have your own system that works for you. Drew just told you his. Dr. T's was awareness, adaptation, to adapt, and then accountability. So his 3 A's of being in a moment where you're about to lose control. Just the awareness of it. That was the same first word you guys used. So powerful to be aware of this before you jump off the grid. I want to ask this for all the people out there that I think, or maybe even more like me. I've always sort of like worked hard all week for a treat. So like I like cheat days, and I don't know if this is good or bad by today's sort of standards, but I've always been this way. It's sort of the rock in me, and you know what I mean, where I'm going to go nuts today, and that's just the way it is. Is that bad? I mean, does that screw up your rhythm of the week? Is that something you would preach as part of conscious fitness? Is to have a day that you've earned where there's no rules today, but tomorrow we're back on the wagon, or is that not a good approach?
Yeah, I think it's very individual for the person. And I'll tell you where I'm at these days. I think it depends on the person, but I think for me, with where I'm at, there's this duality of life. Like, there's the yin and the yang. There's this part of you that wants to be zen and wants to be enlightened and just calm and peaceful all the time. But there's this fierce part of you that wants to rage, that wants to, like, you know, go hard in certain ways. And I think enjoying these substances of life, I think if you deprive yourself completely, you're kind of unbalanced. You're too far over here. And for me, that makes me unrelatable, especially as a dad to two young girls that are, going through hormonal changes and body
Yeah.
image issues with society and pressure. And for us, for me, I'll speak to this when we have like my daughter recently, my oldest one, she likes to go on hikes with me. And afterwards, she likes to go get a donut. And it's kind of like a tradition thing now where it's like, okay, is the donut good for me? Probably not. But it's the memory that we're making in the moment of like, I think it comes down to your intention. What is your intention? Are you eating this food to escape the pains of life and you're going through a breakup and you're sad and you're lonely and you're drinking yourself, to get drunk, or you're eating to numb some type of pain? That's totally different than sitting down, having a donut with your daughter, or having an epic cheat meal, with a different intention. I think what your intention, it's individual, and I think just setting intention before you go ham on something
Sure.
like that is just what it's about. Like, what's the intention behind it?
So, Drew, could a tension that makes sense in your mind be a celebration?
Yes, I think intention for me, yeah, like for example, dude, I'll be totally honest with you. This Saturday, I already have it planned out. I'm running a half marathon with a 45-pound rucksack on. I'm trying to beat my time from last year.
Amazing.
And this is like not an easy race because
No.
you're running 13.1 miles, but with a 45-pound rucksack on. And I told my daughter and my girlfriend, I was like, hey, after the race, I'm ordering pizza. I'm getting Ben and Jerry's dairy-free Netflix and chilled ice cream. That's my favorite ice cream. And I was like, that's gonna be my cheat meal. Like I'm just gonna like, and that doesn't happen very often. They probably haven't seen me do that in a long time. But for me, I'm okay with certain things like that. Like
Yeah.
I really am. It's just if you're doing it, if you have a goal in mind, like let's say you and I are doing a physique show and we have something where we put money down, we're preparing for it. We're not gonna like, sabotage that. I think if you have a goal in mind and you have to be strict for something, then awesome. Do
Yeah.
it, stay disciplined and just follow through. But if you're just like, hey, I'm enjoying life and this is a celebration type of thing, I'm
Yeah.
100% for me personally. I used to be on the other end of the spectrum where I was like, no junk food ever, no bad foods ever, no bad feelings ever, like good vibes only.
Yep.
I feel like that's not the human experience. Because
Yep.
then if you do give into that in one way, shape, or form, then there's guilt and there's shame, and it kind of becomes this religion. And I grew up in a high demand religion, since have like left that religion and see the damaging effects that shame has on us as humans. And so I try not to go down that route anymore.
Yeah. No, I hear everything you're saying. I always try to consider, especially depending on who I'm talking to, if I spot an opportunity to give, I think what might be practical advice that could serve a lot of people to get better results. You said something. You skipped by it really quick, but I thought it was
Yeah.
worth pulling out and highlighting. You said if you put
Sure.
money on a thing, you invested in a thing, like you're going to do this race, it costs money or whatever. I want to draw a powerful a point that I think was super impactful for people that really want to make a transformation in their life. I've noticed this. The second someone creates a pain point in their life that is in alignment with the goal that they're setting, so they make an investment in it, that creates a pain point. Now there's stress. You're betting on yourself essentially when you invest in a thing, when you invest on coaching, when you invest on a retreat, now you're putting money in it. What I've found from my own personal experience and people that I've worked with, second they put money on them, they're much more likely to go after the goal now, because because now I don't want to waste this money. There's a psychological connection for people that are all in. Well, those are the people that put money on it in life. And you always can kind of tell who's serious in life, in my opinion, because it's always the people that make investments in the thing that they claim they want. Now, if I was going to, go all in on anything, now it's like a muscle in me. I'm going to go invest in it because I'm much more likely to show up all in compared to someone who doesn't have a dollar, no skin in the game. They don't show up the same. And I just want to highlight that because you said it real quick, but for people that are out there listening, what a almost life hack to get you to show up and follow through and fight through the craving, fight through be more disciplined. Go put your hard-earned money in the pot, and see how you show up. And therein lies, I think, a lot of what society is not good at doing. Very few people put money on themselves, but they'll go buy the Gucci belt. They'll go try to look rich. They'll go try to find the cheap hacks in life that make them think they're going to feel a certain way instead of doing the actual work. But this is just something I've noticed.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. No, I think there's science behind it. I think you're 5 times more likely
Wow.
to follow through with something if you put money down towards it. And so like invest in yourself, realize that you're worth it. Like when sometimes with my clients, they'll have to pay me a certain amount. And if they're okay with it, I'll say, hey, how about if you don't reach your goal, whatever the goal is that we agree on, you have to pay this much more.
Beautiful.
If you don't reach that goal and they're like, oh shit, I don't want to lose that money. That's a lot of money, like an extra $1,000 or $2,000. So that motivates them so much more to do the work versus like, why can't you just train me for free? Or why don't you just give all this away for free? It's like, if people do it and there's no skin in the game, people will just easily be like, it's not that important. Then, you have to, I think investing in yourself monetarily, I think is huge. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, people don't show up, and you can even reverse it, but still put an incentive in there that's powerful. Hey, if you do this impossible feat, which you get $1,000, or if depending on the person, sometimes like this is something I've noticed with high net worth people. I've got worked with founders, pro athletes, all kinds of people that have a lot of means. If they have a goal, no matter where they're at in life, they've got to create a pain point that will get them to show up. And that pain point oftentimes is the investment that is required for them to feel it. That's why it's hard for me to have a flat fee when I'm working with high net worth people. We just got to figure out what is going to make you move. And the second they put the skin in the game that they can feel, it's like, oh, that kind of check kind of hurt to write. They just show up. If you give it for free, even as noble as that sounds, that person is going to have every reason to not show up. And it sucks. It's the way it is. But this isn't, I don't think it's talked about enough, but if you are someone out there that is considering this, just know the psychology of the way this works is, if you're going to make the decision, write the check and watch your life transform. But, people try to, it doesn't mean they can't be done. Don't get me wrong, but I've just seen so many transformations on so many different levels. And I always know what the secret sauce is. I just know. And the other thing is having a reward. Like a reward is it's not a bad thing. I mean, dude, you did it all week. Let's go party one night.
Yeah,
I don't care, but I don't know, man.
Love it.
So
Love it.
I want to ask you about keto. You wrote a book, I think it was called Complete Keto. You still follow that? Because I think that was written a while ago. I might be wrong. Is that?
Yeah, it was written in 2019.
Okay, so 2019.
And
6 years almost, or 5 years.
5 years ago. No, the way I eat has definitely evolved. Keto, I think, is a great tool to have in your tool belt. 100%. I'll be honest with you. Like keto, I stumbled upon it in 2015. And it changed my life when I got into ketosis. I learned about it from Tim Ferriss and Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, went on the Dr. Oz show talking about the benefits of keto, and was hardcore keto for years. And here's the thing that I'll say that I love about keto is if you do it right, because I think any diet, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. If you do it right, the improvement in mental clarity and cognitive function that I felt and so many of my clients felt is, I think, something that needs to be experienced at some point. I don't think keto is this end all be all diet. I don't think it's superior in any way, but it's something that a lot of modern day humans haven't tapped into because of our modern day society and, processed foods and mostly access to highly, palatable carbohydrates. Being in a state of ketosis and having your brain run on ketones as a fuel source instead of glucose is a really cool feeling. I will say that. I think for me, with where I'm at now, just performance wise as an athlete, I do feel better with carbohydrates. So I'd probably err on the side of I would still say I'm low carb versus other people. Like I'm around 100 grams of carbs per day. But with the amount of muscle I have and how much I work out, I don't think for me, 100 grams of carbs isn't overdoing it. I feel great. I do miss sometimes the mental clarity that I get from being in ketosis and not being a slave to food. I'll be totally honest with you. I loved it when I could only eat twice a day and I wasn't hungry. Didn't feel starving. I felt this consistent energy throughout the day instead of these highs and lows and these dips. But I do think that it's very individual. I think it's a tool in your tool belt. And that's That's pretty much it that I'll
Yeah.
say about keto. I think it's a great tool to have in your tool belt.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and again, there's so much fads and science, and there's data that's always changing, and there's things that are trending and blah, 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 blah. But keto is one of those things that so many people that have done it, that are committed to
Yeah.
it, they all swear by it. I've been in many different, countless times, states of ketosis. I personally enjoy a fasted
Yeah.
lifestyle just because I work so much and I hate stressing about food all day. And that just freed me up to just go like pursue life. Cause
Yeah.
I don't even know. I think some people get it, you'll get it, but man, all my whole life, it was, food prepping 5 meals a day, 6 meals a day sometimes. And that freed me up. And I always thought like that would wither me away. And I worked so hard for muscle. It was always a stressor. And it's funny how your body is amazing. It preserves muscle. It can burn all kinds of fun stuff for energy, but ketosis is a very cool thing. I agree with you. Not for everyone for sure, but it is something to consider for people that don't know. Drew, maybe you can kind of give a brief connection to just the simplicity of ketosis and what it is, and just give the perspective. A lot of people, surprisingly, don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'll be really brief with it. So basically, in summary, ketosis is our body's backup system to survive if we ran out of food. So humans were designed to run off of two different types of fuel: glucose, right, which is a very quick, fast burning energy. But if you were to run out of food, every human in the world has this backup system called ketosis, where we can burn our stored body fat, turn those fatty acids in the liver into ketones, and ketones get used as an alternative fuel source. And there's two ways to get into ketosis. You could starve yourself or fast, like you and I have done, and literally within 2 or 3 days, almost every single person would be in ketosis, which, that's not the funnest way to do it, but that's one way to do it. Or if you eat a keto diet, which is, I would say, high fat, moderate protein, low carb is the typical keto approach. So most of your calories are coming from healthy fats like, coconut oil, butter, avocado oil, olive oil, things like that, fattier cuts of meat, and then protein, and then a very, very low glucose, like 30 grams or less, typically works for most people. And that's kind of how you would get into a state of ketosis, is either by not eating or eating a ketogenic diet. And, there are applications for it. It was discovered in the 1920s to help kids with epilepsy, severe epilepsy, and it got rid of their seizures. So I know people to this day that literally have to be in a state of ketosis all the time. Otherwise, it triggers a seizure for them if they are severely epileptic. And there's a lot of other applications for it, but that's just one. And that's kind of what ketosis is in a nutshell. And there's essential fatty acids, there's essential amino acids, but there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Technically, you don't technically need carbohydrates to survive, but you do need fatty acids, so healthy fats, and you do need amino acids, aka protein, to survive as a human. So it's our body's backup system. And I think it's really cool to experiment to find out what works best for you.
Yeah. And when it comes to, inflammation, I think one thing that's just really important to be sort of self-aware of you is where a lot of inflammation is coming into your life. And people swear by, some of these diets like ketosis, that inflammatory process in their body is just less on a diet like that. But the one thing that's not in any quality diet is chemicals, fake food, fast food. You're not getting a lot of the stuff that is killing so many Americans. Drew, I know we're on a time crunch here. How much time do you have? And we'll button this up if you're
10 more minutes.
Oh, good. So I'm not right at the near finish line. Yeah. With a guy like Drew, you could talk all day. He's a wealth of information, Drew. I know you got something you've been really getting into is these retreats that you do. That maybe you can kind of tell our audience about the retreats and some of the work you're doing there.
Yeah, so we've briefly talked about conscious fitness, which is my approach to more of a holistic approach to health and fitness. And what I've learned over the past year or two since trying to implement that is giving people an opportunity to come here to the Big Island of Hawaii and experience a conscious fitness experience in a retreat format for 5 or 6 days is very powerful and very profound. So people are like, okay, what's conscious fitness? How does it work exactly? How is it different than your traditional health and fitness approach? Being able to come out here and experiencing it is a really powerful tool for people. And we talked about investing in yourself. Obviously, this is an investment, but you come out here for 5 days. We teach, or me and the other coaches, we teach different modalities to help you become the best version of you, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, so that when you go back home, you have tools and something tangible to take home with you to help you reframe your mindset, shift your perception, and create that new identity. Because a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I want to change, but they don't know how to change. They don't know how to overcome their patterns and behaviors that have been programmed into their brain for decades. And, like we talked about, building self-awareness, like the excursions that we have and activities planned and the breath work that we do and the other healing modalities that we have set up at the retreat all help you develop that self-awareness. And then once you become more aware of why you are the way you are and why you do what you do, then we start to develop some self-respect, which then ultimately gets you to a place of self-love. And I used to, as a guy growing up, like, we were taught to be tough and not cry and not show our emotions. And I think there's value in that for a period of time. But as you grow older, I've learned is that kind of mentality can be kind of hard for some people to like bond, have real relationships with people, because you're constantly wearing a mask. You're constantly, pretending to be someone that you've been told to be your whole life. And as this conscious fitness retreat, this environment allows you to take off the mask and be seen and to allow yourself to feel your emotions, like, allow yourself to feel all of it. And when you do that, it's very healing. And you start to develop that self-love that we talked about. And I think when you start to truly love yourself, not in the egotistical way, but more of like seeing yourself as this little child. Like a lot of us have heard of inner child work. And that's ultimately what we're doing here at the retreat, is seeing all the things that you've done in your past, being able to see yourself as a little boy or a little girl still, an innocent version of you before you were domesticated, before, society told you what's okay and what's not okay. We were all these beautiful, innocent little creatures, these little children, if you will. And when you start to see yourself as that, and if anyone knows the actor Terry Crews, highly recommend following him. He's this big man's man, muscles everywhere. Like, I love the guy. He's so funny, but he is so vulnerable and so open. He's kind of like the person in Hollywood that really opened up my eyes to, wow, here's this dude like bearing his heart and soul on this Facebook Live one time and being vulnerable. And I that was so powerful for me to see a man like that kind of give permission for other men to be vulnerable as well. And when you develop that self-love and you see yourself as the inner child, you start to show up for yourself differently. You start to talk to the inner dialogue that inside your head starts to change, and you start wanting to show up for yourself differently. So you, like I said, you look at exercise and eating healthy food, or the way you talk about your body starts to shift, and you want to show up for yourself coming from a place of self-love instead of I hate myself, I better lose this fat, and like, the self-hate approach, which, believe me, that was my approach for the first 30 plus years of my life. And it worked to a certain extent, but the journey was so unfulfilling, because if I made one mistake, if I did one sin, or if I wasn't perfect with my diet or didn't have like the perfect 3% body fat, then there was a lot of self-hate that would come up, and like, you're not good enough unless this, you're not good enough unless you look like this, things like that. And letting go of that and developing some self-love, for me, it was a game changer, because like I said before, if you don't heal what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those who didn't cut you. And as a dad, that's what my journey is all about, is like, I don't want to pass on these patterns unconsciously of pain to my kids. They deserve the best version of me, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that's what we do here at Conscious Fitness Retreats here in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's ultimately what it's about.
No, it was really well said, man. And I think just to add one little thing that I think is even more valuable than everything you just laid out about, or sort of the self-love concept for healing and for finding fulfillment and finding quality in the work that must be done, that you're aware of now that you need to do. that
Yeah.
approach. I also think that so much of what I've been learning about recently that I'm such a strong believer in is the way you talk to yourself. That sort of resonates through every part of your body. And I think so many people sort of are negative or the pessimistic or the toxic sort of thoughts that they have not figured out how to heal. Connecting back to that child that you talk about, it actually is creating so much health problems inside their body. Where when you're just kind to yourself, you're actually aiding in the healing process, physically and spiritually and emotionally, and it's such a better way than the way you described for the first 30 years of your life. And that is something that is even new to me. That idea that like how I talk to my body can actually create sickness. And if I can create it, I can actually heal it. What a powerful gift to be able to teach someone, man. So we'll make sure we put this in the show notes, try to connect people to what you're doing. You're doing such great work, man. I think it's really beautiful. One last thing I wanted to ask you is how important is environment? So if you're wanting to go all in on yourself, but you have a toxic husband who's you're not going to do the work with you, or if you're not in an environment where people are around you that are promoting these messages that you're trying to work, one thing I've noticed is so many people that you try to commit, their environment is not committed with them, and it makes it such a hard thing to do. Can you speak to that just a little bit? I think it's a very important thing to bring out as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of empathy for people who, some people's environment is within their control and other people's might not be.
Sure.
Right. And I think what I've learned over the years of doing therapy and life coaching is, focusing on the things that you can control, like what in your environment is in your control. Perfect. Is it the food in your fridge? Is it the food in your pantry? Is it, you having access to a gym, or do you have to have equipment at home? Like setting up your environment, I think is essential, because humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. And if you can create a new environment and adapt to that new environment, the change that you're seeking will become a byproduct of living in that new environment. But I get it that some people's environments, just like I said, some people are like surviving day to day. They're working 2-3 jobs. They're sacrificing their sleep. They're overwhelmed. They're exhausted. I have so much love for those people. And I understand that they want to maybe be like you and me, where they have more time to exercise and things like that. And all I'll say is every single day when you wake up, ask yourself or look at yourself in the mirror and say, what can I do for myself to show up for myself today? And there are certain things that are in your control, and there's certain things that are out of your control. Focus on the things that are in your control and focus on those wins for the day. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not the way you want it to be. I work with so many women that are on this journey of losing weight, but they're juggling kids, a full-time job, keeping the house clean, laundry, meal prepping, all the things. And I'm like, look, if you had nothing to do but meal prep and meditate and work out all day, then obviously you'd hit your goal like so much faster. But you're kind of like, you have 45 minutes a day to yourself, and that's probably about it. So what can we do in those 45 minutes? You can escape the pain by numbing out on food and alcohol and drugs and TV and movies and stuff like that, or scrolling social media. But maybe there's some things that you can do in your environment to create the change that you're seeking. And that's ultimately how you're going to win the battle, is creating that environment. But, I know that it's not going to be perfect, and people have this all or nothing mentality. Either It's got to be perfect or nothing. So,
yeah. And I get that. I mean, it's so natural for a lot of people, including myself. But again, I think it gets back to the main word is awareness. Everything in your life, man, bringing awareness to it will change your life. Because then once you're aware of it, you can put a system to it. You can build a game plan, a blueprint, figure out who can help you, and you start piecing this thing together little bit by little bit. But man, this was a great conversation, Drew. I know this will help a lot of people,
Thanks,
brother.
Eric.
We want to send people to you, man. Where's the best place? I know Instagram, your whole world's sort of on there, but is there anywhere else we can send people, or do you want to maybe kind of list out the spot that's best for you?
Yeah, I would say go to consciousfitnessretreat.com, and we could put that in the show notes, because I know some people sometimes don't know how to spell conscious fitness, like consciousfitnessretreat.com. I would say go there, learn more about the retreat. Follow me on social media, Instagram at fat2fit. And just, hit me up whenever. And I respond to most of my DMs.
Amazing. Drew, thank you so much, man, for doing the show. I appreciate you. And we'll definitely see you soon. And
Yeah.
for you guys listening, thank you for listening. If you think this show could help someone, I always ask you, please send it to someone that you care about, that you love, that you think this could transform. This is what we're here. This is why we're doing this work. This is what it's all about. And this show doesn't work if you don't help us keep the message moving. So we really appreciate you. Like, follow, share, and then also go over to Drew and show some love. And if Drew can help you in any way, I'll validate it. He's one of the best in the business. Nobody better than Drew. So thank you for watching the show, listening to the show, wherever you're from. We'll see you next week.